kick off this deep dive. We're going all in on 3D printing in 2025.
Sounds good to me.
So to guide us on this adventure, we've got Tom's Hardware's Best 3D Printers of 2025 article. A really interesting piece from 3D natives. And, of course, we can't forget the always lively Prusa 3D subreddit.
Oh yeah, those Prusa folks have a lot to say, especially these days.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking cutting-edge tech, some maybe a bit heated debates, and, well, I guess a little glimpse into where this whole 3D printing thing might be going.
It's moving fast, that's for sure.
So what we really want to do is give you the lowdown.
Absolutely.
You know, whether you've been building your own robots for years or you're just kind of curious about 3D printing.
Right.
We want to break it down, explain the big players, the controversies, and maybe, just maybe, spark an idea or two for your next project. Sound good?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Let's jump right in. Tom's Hardware, they've got this best of 2025 list.
Yeah, it's a good one. What strikes me is just how many different kinds of printers are out there now.
It really shows how accessible it's all become.
Like there's something for everybody.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Any price range, any level of experience, you name it.
You got it.
So, for instance, they've got these budget-friendly options like the Creality Ender 3 V3 SE.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just starting out, that's a good one to try.
Dip your toes in the water.
Exactly.
And then on the other end, you've got those who want things a bit smoother, maybe a bit more beginner-friendly.
Right.
For them, there's the Bambu Lab A1 Mini.
No, that's where things get a little interesting.
Yeah, interesting is one way to put it. Bambu Lab, well, they've been making some headlines.
Oh, yeah, they have.
Not all of them good either.
Not all of them. A lot of talk about their latest firmware update. And, well, there's been some pushback, you could say.
I think pushback is putting it mildly. Some folks are downright furious.
I get it, though. It's a big shift.
Okay, for those who haven't been following this saga, maybe we should, back up a bit. What's the deal with this update, and why is everyone so upset?
So basically, Bambu Lab, they decided to restrict local access to their printers.
Meaning?
Meaning if you want to configure the printer, control it, you got to use their cloud-based app. No more messing around with things directly.
Oh, wow, that's a pretty big change. Why would they do that?
Well, their official line is security.
Okay.
Apparently, they were seeing millions of unauthorized access attempts on their servers. Millions. They say they had to do something.
So they beefed up security.
They did, yeah. Authorization mechanisms, encryption protocols, code signing, the whole 9 yards.
Sounds reasonable, I guess. I mean, who wants their printer hacked?
Right. But that's where the 3D Natives article and that Reddit thread come in. They offer a different perspective,
Okay, let's hear it. What are folks saying?
Well, the big concern is this move away from open source.
Oh, right. 3D printing has always been big on open source.
Right.
Sharing designs, modifying firmware, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And a lot of people feel like Bambu Lab is, well, kind of betraying that ethos.
Yeah, I see how that could rub some people the wrong way. It's like this fundamental difference in philosophy, almost.
Yeah, you've got the open source folks who really value that freedom.
To tinker, to customize, to share.
And then you've got the folks who want convenience.
Plug and play, just get it printing.
Exactly. And Bambu Lab, they're sort of pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable, They're saying, look, we can give you a better user experience if you give us a little more control.
So it's a trade-off. But it's definitely got people talking.
It's got people yelling, actually, especially on that Reddit thread.
Oh, yeah. What are they saying over there?
Well, some are calling the Bambu Connect plugin spyware, basically.
Oh.
Yeah. And there are real worries about data privacy. All that info going up to the cloud, who knows what happens to it?
Right. That's a legitimate concern these days.
And then there's the speculation. Some people think Bambu Lab is setting the stage for something even bigger.
Like what?
Like a subscription-based model. Imagine you can only use their brand of filament.
Oh, wow. That would be a huge change.
Yeah, it would. Now, I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but the idea alone is enough to get people riled up.
I bet. So we've got Bambu Lab pushing innovation, pushing user-friendliness, and a whole lot of people pushing back. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, and it makes this whole best 3D printers of 2025 thing even more interesting because, Bambu Lab, they're right there at the top of the list.
So even with all this controversy, people are still loving their printers.
It seems that way. They've got the P1S. It's their pick for best 3D printer overall. Multicolor printing, incredible speed. It's got it all.
But right alongside it, they've got the Creality Ender 3 V3 SE.
Yep, best budget 3D printer. Shows you don't need to spend a fortune to get a great machine these days.
So it's not a total Bambu Lab sweep. there's still room for other players, especially those who, well, maybe aren't so keen on the whole Bambu Lab ecosystem.
Right. And if you're all about precision and open source, you got to look at Prusa.
Ah, yes, Prusa. Tom's Hardware calls the MK4S the best premium 3D printer.
And they're not wrong.
Yeah.
Accuracy, reliability, and of course that strong commitment to open source.
It's like the antithesis of Bambu Lab in a way.
In some ways, yeah. It's the printer for the tinkerers, the folks who want to be in control.
Right, they want to understand how it all works, maybe even make their own modifications.
Exactly. And then you've got the original Prusa XL, their best multicolor 3D printer, 5 tool heads for seamless color changes and multi-material printing. It's a beast.
5 tool heads. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's a serious machine.
So we've got a taste of what's out there. We've got the budget-friendly Creality, the, let's say, the innovative but controversial Bambu Lab.
Uh-huh.
And then we've got the open source champion Prusa. And this is just the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Just scratching the surface.
Tom's Hardware. They've even got specialized machines on their list, like resin printers. The Eligo Mars 5 Ultra. They call it the best for ultra-high resolution.
If you need incredible detail, that's the one to get. Miniatures, jewelry, anything intricate.
Wow. So many options. But this whole Bambu Lab thing, this closed ecosystem versus the open source approach, it makes you think, what does it all mean for someone who just wants to buy a 3D printer in 2025?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something we're going to dig into a lot more. What are the pros and cons of each approach? Are there risks, rewards? And ultimately, how do you figure out which path is right for you?
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about this sort of clash happening in the 3D printing world.
Yeah, this whole thing with Bambu Lab, their move towards a more closed system.
Right. It's really shaking things up. I mean, for a long time, 3D printing has been all about open source, sharing, collaborating, that kind of thing.
It's a big part of the community for sure.
And now you've got Bambu Lab coming in saying, hey, we can make things easier, more user-friendly, but at what cost, you know?
Right. There are definitely trade-offs. And it's interesting because even with all the backlash, their printers are still getting rave reviews.
Yeah, we were just looking at Tom's Hardware's Best of 2025 list, and Bambu Lab is all over it. So clearly they're doing something right.
They are, but it raises the question, is the 3D printing world at a crossroads?
I think it might be. On one side, you've got the diehard open source fans.
The tinkerers, the ones who love to get their hands dirty and really understand how things work.
Exactly. And they're looking at this Bambu Lab situation and saying, whoa, hold on, this isn't what 3D printing is about.
Right, but then you've got this other group, the people who just want to print. They don't necessarily care about the inner workings, they just want results.
And for them, Bambu Lab's approach, with its emphasis on ease of use and speed, is really appealing.
Absolutely. And you see that reflected in the printers themselves. We talked about the Prusa MK4S before,
Right.
The best premium 3D printer, according to Tom's Hardware.
Yeah, that's a classic example of the open source philosophy.
Totally. It's reliable, it's precise, and it's got that open source firmware so you can customize it to your heart's content.
Whereas the Bambu Lab P1S, their best 3D printer overall, it's all about streamlining the process. Multicolor printing, incredible speed, and you control it all through their cloud platform.
Which is where the controversy comes in, right?
Exactly. That reliance on the cloud, it makes people nervous.
And rightfully so. I mean, the 3D Natives article and that Reddit thread, they both raise some valid concerns about what this shift could mean.
Data privacy, potential limitations on what filament you can use, it's all up in the air.
And there's this feeling that Bambu Lab is sort of turning its back on the community aspect of 3D printing.
Which, has always been a big part of it. People sharing designs, helping each other out, that sort of thing.
Right, but the interesting thing is, even on that Reddit thread, there's a real divide.
Oh, yeah.
Some people are absolutely furious, calling Bambu Lab all sorts of names, saying they've betrayed the open source movement.
I can see why they'd feel that way.
But then you've got other people saying, hey, relax, most people don't even touch the firmware anyway.
They just want to print.
Exactly, and for them, the benefits of Bambu Lab's approach outweigh the risks.
So it's a tough one. There are legitimate arguments on both sides.
Definitely. And ultimately, it comes down to what's important to you as a user. What kind of 3D printing experience are you looking for?
Right. Do you value that freedom to tinker, to customize, to really get under the hood?
Or are you more interested in convenience, speed, and a more streamlined workflow?
It's a big decision, especially with so many great printers out there.
It is, but I think that's what makes it so exciting. There's something for everyone. If you're all about open source, there's Prusa with their amazing community and their commitment to giving users control.
But if you're more drawn to the plug-and-play experience, the ease of use that Bambu Lab offers, well, that's a valid choice too.
Absolutely. And the fact that we're even having this conversation shows just how dynamic the 3D printing world is.
It's constantly evolving, pushing boundaries, challenging the status quo.
And as 3D printing becomes more mainstream, these conversations are only going to get more important. The choices we make as users will shape the future of this technology.
So where do we go from here? We've talked about the big picture, the controversies, the key players, but we've only scratched the surface of what's actually possible with 3D printing in 2025. Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, it's really striking how much 3D printing is changing, even just in the last few years.
Yeah.
We're seeing these new companies like Bambu Lab come in and, well, they're not afraid to shake things up a bit.
They're definitely pushing the envelope, that's for sure. This whole idea of a closed ecosystem, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it's a real departure from how things have traditionally been done in 3D printing.
Yeah.
But like we were saying before the break, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. It just means more choices for users. And that's where I think this best 3D printers of 2025 list from Tom's Hardware is so useful. It really highlights the diversity of what's out there now.
Totally. It's not just a popularity contest. It's a showcase of all the amazing things that 3D printing can do these days. And one thing that really jumped out at me was the focus on speed.
Oh yeah, the speed is incredible. I mean, we were talking about the Creality Ender 3v3 earlier, the one they called the fastest budget 3D printer. It's mind-blowing how fast these machines can print now.
I remember when I first got into 3D printing, you'd start a print, and, well, you basically just forget about it for a day or two. Now you can have a finished part in a couple of hours, sometimes even less.
It's a game changer, for sure, especially if you're doing prototyping or need to create custom parts quickly.
Exactly. And it's not just about speed either. Multicolor printing seems to be all the rage these days. Both Bambu Lab and Prusa have their own versions of this technology.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how different companies are approaching the same problem. Like with Bambu Lab, they've got that AMS system on the P1S. It makes multicolor printing really convenient, but some people complain about the filament waste.
Yeah, the infamous filament poop, right?
Exactly. But then you look at the original Prusa XL, and they've gone with the 5-tool head system. More complicated, maybe, but potentially less wasteful and definitely more flexible.
So again, it comes down to choices. Do you want the convenience of Bambu Lab's system, or are you willing to put in a bit more effort for the potential benefits of Prusa's approach?
And those choices, they go beyond just the printer itself. One of the big decisions anyone getting into 3D printing has to make is filament versus resin.
Yeah, that's a big one. Filament printers, they're generally more affordable and easier to get started with.
Right, especially for beginners. Filament is pretty forgiving, relatively speaking.
But resin printing, that's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah.
The detail you can get with resin is just incredible.
It's amazing, yeah. Like, Tom's Hardware has the Elegoo Mars 5 Ultra as their pick for best for ultra-high resolution, and the things you can print with that machine are just mind-blowing.
I've seen some of the miniatures and jewelry people are printing with resin, and it's like, whoa, is that even real?
Right, but of course resin is more expensive, and you have to be a lot more careful with it because of the toxicity, so there are definitely trade-offs there, too.
It seems like with 3D printing, it's all about trade-offs.
It is in a lot of ways, but that's what makes it so interesting. There are so many different ways to approach it, so many different options depending on your needs and your budget.
It's pretty exciting, actually.
Yeah.
And a little overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah.
So much to learn, so much to explore.
That's the beauty of it, though. It's a constantly evolving field, and there's always something new to discover. And the more we talk about these things, the more informed we can be as users.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of 3D printing in 2025.
It's been a fascinating journey.
We've covered a lot of ground, talked about the trends, the controversies, the big players. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two and maybe even gotten inspired to try out 3D printing for yourself.
Definitely. And remember, no matter what your level of experience is, there's a place for you in this community.
Absolutely. So keep creating, keep innovating, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with 3D printing. And don't forget to check out the show notes for links to all the sources we talked about today. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.